David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So we do have primary elections today. 3 of the 4 scheduled primaries are happening today, despite what is going on with coronavirus. Arizona, Florida, Illinois, and Ohio were scheduled to vote. Now, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, who's a Republican, announced polls are closed. The Ohio primary is postponed. And tentatively for June, although who on earth knows at this point what our world will look like in 3 months. It's hard to imagine what it'll even look like in 10 days if the current infection numbers continue. This is do or die for Bernie. I mean, if Joe Biden picks up more than an additional 100 delegate lead on Bernie tonight, you know, Bernie has a hypothetical path right now, although it's unlikely. It's already a long shot. If Bernie falls another 100 delegates behind tonight, it's essentially done. So we'll look at national polling, we'll look at delegate counts, we'll look at state polls and figure out sort of what to expect tonight. In terms of the delegate count going in, it's a 151 delegate lead for Joseph R. Biden Jr., 894 to 743. We believed that tonight we were going to have a total of 577 delegates available. That's Arizona, Florida, Illinois, and Ohio. Florida, of course, the big prize with 219 delegates. Ohio postponing their primary, so the 136 delegates out of Ohio will be saved for another day, so to speak. Now, in terms of the polling, as you know, nationally, Bernie Sanders has hit a ceiling of about 36%. And nationally, Joe Biden is leading the last dozen or so polls, most recently by as much as 29. Bernie did manage to get 38% in the latest Economist YouGov poll. But the numbers looking very, very solid for the former vice president. Looking state by state at polling in the states that were scheduled to vote today, in Arizona, Joe Biden averaging plus 18. In Florida, Joe Biden averaging plus 39. Illinois has Biden at plus 29.5. And Ohio, which again has postponed their primary as of now until sometime in June, who knows? Biden was up 22.5. I'm not even going to do delegate estimates for what it'll look like at the end of the night. I mean, I think we all know that with these margins, if the margins hold, it's a very bad night for Bernie Sanders and a huge debate over whether anybody should be voting at all because of what, you know, we have on the one hand, and we'll get to it, Donald Trump yesterday saying officially for the country, you shouldn't have more than 10 people together. Kids shouldn't be at schools. Restaurants and bars should close. And we may have to continue some version of this up until July or August. And then meanwhile, Florida, Illinois, and Arizona have huge crowds of people, presumably, assuming people are showing up to vote, and we will find out in just a few hours, congregating and doing all of the things Donald Trump says they are not supposed to do. There was the idea that maybe the debate between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden on Sunday night would change the numbers. It didn't. We now have post-debate polls, and the numbers are essentially unchanged. It was scheduled to be a debate with an audience in Arizona. Because of the virus, the change was made to do it in a studio with just the candidates and 3 moderators with CNN in Washington, D.C. And again, I think that there were a lot of people emailing me expecting Biden to implode, unable to speak because of his supposed dementia, which has been a story being pushed not only by people on the right, but also some people on the left. And the problem is the expectation was that Biden would so miserably implode. Biden just had to be coherent for the debate, and he was unlikely to really be damaged. And that's what happened. You know, there were some disagreements about how to deal with the virus. I think Bernie's strongest moment during the 2-person debate on Sunday night was when they started talking about Social Security. But again, it didn't seem like it was going to make a difference. I tweeted that I didn't think it was going to make a difference. We now have post-debate polling, and it has not made a difference so far. So we are going to know very soon what, at least in Arizona, Illinois, and Florida, Democratic voters who choose to go have decided. The other idea that's been floated has been because old folks are more at risk if they get the virus. Old folks may disproportionately stay home, which will hurt Biden and help Bernie. That was floated last week as well. Now, of course, in a week, a lot has changed when it comes to the virus and to people being told to stay home. We'll know within hours. At this point, I don't know that it makes much sense to speculate beyond these ideas. We will have a results live stream starting tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. I hope you'll join me. We will take in the results together in what are very, very strange times at this point, quite frankly. For me, it's every morning I wake up, sometimes a few minutes before my alarm, sometimes with my alarm. And I would call it a 5-second period. It's probably more a fraction of a second where I forget what's going on with coronavirus. It feels normal for just like a fraction of a second. And then I remember that that's not the case. And we've shifted around our entire production to adjust to trying to stay away from people and crowds. I am, mostly just home. This could go on for months. We don't know. But there is that split second in the morning where it just feels normal. I'm wondering if other people are experiencing that. I think we will all remember living through this, those that do. And of course, tragically, not everybody will. Those that live through this will certainly remember this for the rest of our lives. Yesterday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average had once again a disastrous day, falling 12.93% in a single trading day. That is just under 3,000 points in one day. If we look at the worst declines in history by points, yesterday was the worst day ever. Now, I know I said this 2 weeks ago, and I said it twice last week. It keeps happening. And in fact, if you look at the biggest single day point declines in history, 9 of the largest 15 point declines in history have come in the last few weeks. Now, if we look at declines by percentage, which may be more valuable in some sense, yesterday was the second worst stock market decline by percentage ever at 12.93%. The only time that the stock market had a worse day than yesterday on a percentage basis was the day known as Black Monday, October 19, 1987, a historically bad day. That's the only day that was a worse day than yesterday by percentage. And otherwise, you're looking at worse than the 1920s Great Depression numbers, okay? Not the 2008 Great Recession. Yesterday, stocks were down more by percentage than during any day of the Great Depression of the 1920s. Think about that. And this has now wiped out all of the gains of the Trump stock market of the last 38 months. When Donald Trump took office, the Dow was just a few points under 20,100. That's where we ended yesterday, 20,188. We're back to where we were. All of the gains of the Trump administration are gone. And unfortunately, this level of erratic stock market performance and the declines are likely not over. We could have a long way to go. Entire industries are unfortunately going to be decimated. So the question is, what can we do? The Fed printing money is having minimal impact. The usual suspects are going to get bailed out, the airlines, the cruise ship companies, and many more. But what about individuals? What about small businesses? There's going to be some capital injections, money made available through small business association loans. There will be some other stimulus, but there will be businesses destroyed by this. I don't know how the countless restaurants that are currently relegated to takeout and delivery only survive this. Their landlords are going to want rent unless rent is suspended or forgiven or made up by the government. Many restaurant owners are going to say, I just have to walk away. I have to walk away from the restaurant, even with rent support given by state or federal government, state or federal governments. Many restaurants are not going to survive because they're just not going to make enough money. So right away, we probably need a combination of some kind of universal basic income for people making under X amount or businesses whose gross revenues are under Y amount. I don't know what those numbers are, but we probably need something like that. Mitt Romney has suggested $1,000 a month. Ro Khanna has a proposal that's a $6,000 one-time payment for people making under 65K. We need something like that. Number two, we are going to need the government to step in and say, we will make or guarantee mortgage payments, rent payments. I mean, I'm thinking out loud here. All non-essential travel is going to have to be stopped. What counts as essential travel? I don't know, but you've got to define it somehow. People need to stop moving around. Red states are filled with people just partying at beaches in close proximity. These are idiots. These are bad people, some of them. Maybe Donald Trump yesterday finally saying this is not under control will make a difference. And it's tragic in many ways. This is why it's crucial that we grin and bear it now. We stay home. We try to turn the corner on new infections, but it is not looking good. The latest numbers as of an hour ago were 188,000 official cases worldwide. I mean, the number is probably millions worldwide at this point. There are estimates that Ohio has 100,000 actual infections. There are estimates that the country, the U.S., has 500,000 or 750,000. We just don't know. We know the death toll currently has passed 7,500. And we must get it under control. The economy will suffer for a while. This is going to be ugly. But if we don't work together, it's only going to be worse. Let me know what you're doing. What are you able to do on Twitter? I'm on Twitter at @dpackman. Follow me. Let me know what you've got going on.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new members of the day are Jerry Hickle and Lisette Brody. Jerry and Lisette, thank you so much. I appreciate your support, and I really appreciate the support of everybody who's been grabbing memberships as we have completely sort of realigned and reprogrammed how we are doing the show in light of the virus. I also want to say thanks to Scott Dalson. Scott is today's sustaining member of the day. Scott's been a member for 5 years. Grab a membership. It's quick, it's easy, it's cheap at joinpakman.com. You all know that I don't think Donald Trump is a good president. I don't think he's an honest person. I don't think he's competent. I believe he's way in over his head. He's the worst president I've personally lived through. But I also hope you know that when Trump or anyone does the right thing, I'm not afraid to say it. And in some small ways, Donald Trump did some good things yesterday while also doing many, many bad things during his coronavirus press conference and later on Twitter. Trump gave what for him was his most presidential statement and briefing on coronavirus, and maybe on anything since the start of his presidency, because Trump came out and he didn't immediately brag uncontrollably about how great his response has been. He was initially sober and, quite frankly, scared looking and saying, we need to take some serious precautions and outlining a list of those behavior changes that need to happen. He actually looked like, when I say scared, he looked like he understood the gravity of the situation. And he admitted coronavirus is not under control. New guidelines recommended by Trump yesterday: homeschool all kids, don't go to bars, don't go to restaurants, no gatherings of more than 10 people. Okay. No idea whether state governors will put those policies into action, but we have to start getting through to the Trumpists who are acting like nothing is going on, spreading the disease, going to beaches, going to concerts, and bragging about it. And that's why this matters. Trump went on to say a whole bunch of crazy stuff and lies and tweets, and I'll tell you about it. But even Trump saying this matters because this is just math, okay? His red state followers have not been taking this seriously, and they are preventing us from limiting transmission. They've been going to beaches and concerts and parties and spreading the disease. Here is Trump obviously lying about never having previously said the virus was under control, but at least he is saying, no, the virus is not under control. And apologies about the tinny audio on this clip.
Do you want to revisit that statement if we are going to be experiencing this until July or August, 5 more months? ahead of
Yeah,
right where we
when
are
I'm
now?
talking about control, I'm saying we are doing a very good job within the confines of what we're dealing with. We're doing a very good job. There's been a tremendous amount of the way they're working together. They're working hand in hand. I think they're doing really a great job. And from that standpoint, that's what I was referring to. Yes,
You're not saying it's under control, right?
I'm not referring to it, meaning the. Yeah, if you're talking about the virus, no, that's not under control for any place in the world. I think
Yes,
I read.
you had said it
I
was.
think
I
I
just
read.
wanted to
No, I
clarify.
didn't. I was talking about what we're doing is under control, but I'm not talking about the virus. Yes, please.
So still some deception saying I never said it was under control. That's not true. That's a lie. He said it was under control many, many times, but he's at least admitting it is not under control. Trump says the new guidelines might be necessary until July or August. That is mind-blowingly inconceivable to tens of millions of Americans. But here is Trump laying out what he sees as the worst case scenario.
Do you have any kind of estimate that if Americans really were to band together and do what the White House is suggesting, how quickly you could turn this corner?
My favorite question, I ask it all the time. How many times, Anthony? I think I ask him that question every day, and I speak to Deborah, I speak to a lot of them. I get the opinion. So it seems to me that if we do a really good job, we'll not only hold the death down to a level that is much lower than the other way, had we not done a good job. But people are talking about July, August, something like that. So it could be right in that period of time where it washes through. Other people don't like that term, but where it washes through.
So is this the new normal until the height of the summer?
We'll see what happens, but they think August, could be July, could be longer than that. But I've asked that question many, many times. Yeah.
Now, where he did go off the rails was rating his response to the virus as a 10 out of 10.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so that's the regular old Trump we know coming out. He also kept repeating, who could have imagined this a month ago? Nobody imagined this could happen a month ago. That's not presidential and that's not honest. We've been covering it for months and we weren't even particularly early to the game. We've all been warning for months that this is exactly the situation that could develop, and it has. And then also later in the day, Donald Trump losing all presidential political capital that he gained with the statement by tweeting about the so-called Chinese virus, saying the United States will be powerfully supporting those industries like airlines and others that are particularly affected by the Chinese virus. We will be stronger than ever before. Chinese virus, of course, completely xenophobic and discriminatory and counterproductive in every way, particularly when now China actually is not the epicenter nor the place with the most active cases, and they have it under control. Completely meaningless statement. And then again this morning, Cuomo wants all states to be treated the same, but all states aren't the same. Some are being hit hard by the Chinese virus. Some are being hit practically not at all. New York is a very big hotspot. West Virginia has thus far 0 cases. Andrew, keep politics out of it. Of course, it is very political to rebrand it the Chinese virus. This is the same racist, xenophobic, blame China, blame Chinese people stuff. And Trump clearly not able to remain a normal person or remotely presidential for more than a few minutes at the time. Yesterday confirmed that. But I will take the small win where I can get it. Trump saying, not under control. Don't go to school. Don't go to bars. Don't congregate in groups of more than 10. Don't go to restaurants. And this could last until July or August. It's something that will hopefully influence his followers. Massachusetts is basically shut down in terms of the restaurant industry, in terms of entertainment, in terms of all of that stuff. Gyms are shut down. Individual restaurants, at least as far as we know, aren't going to be bailed out like the airlines and the cruise ship industry and oil companies or anybody else. And even if this goes on until only June, the recovery time for some industries is potentially going to be years long. Many businesses are not going to return from this, and that's horrible. But we have to do what we have to do. And that's why we're taking it so seriously here. Not taking it very seriously is Fox News. Yesterday, I had video of Congressman Devin Nunes suggesting that the coronavirus pandemic is a great time to go to restaurants because they won't be busy. You'll be able to get right in and get yourself a beautiful table. We now have video of the buffoons at Fox and Friends, which Trump watches, remember, saying this is a great time to fly, despite warnings from every public health organization in the world saying the opposite. First reminder, this was Devin Nunes. We played this clip for you yesterday.
And there's a lot of concerns with the economy here because people are scared to go out. But I will just say, one of the things you can do if you're healthy, you and your family, it's a great time to just go out, go to a local restaurant. Yeah. Likely you can get in easily. Let's not hurt the working people in this country that are relying on wages and tips to keep their small business going.
We're very sympathetic.
Don't run to the
Understood.
Yeah, just don't run to the grocery store and buy $4,000 of food.
Right, they're cleaning off the shelves.
Go to your local pub.
We want to be very sympathetic to what's going on.
Okay, so now let's get to Fox and Friends. Here's Ainsley Earhart on Fox and Friends.
It's actually the safest time to fly. Everyone I know that's flying right now, terminals are pretty much dead. Ghost towns. And then the planes, remember back in the day when you had a seat next to you, possibly empty, you could stretch out a little more? Yeah. It's like that on every flight now.
What do you mean?
When I used to fly years ago,
you mean
the plane wasn't
seats?
full.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
My wife was flying yesterday. Every seat on the plane was taken.
Really?
Absolutely.
And taken?
It was taken. There were
people are leaving New York to head down to Florida.
Well, wouldn't you? Yesterday, the mayor declared a state of emergency here.
So there it is. Great time to fly. And notice Steve Doocy adding idiocy to idiocy, saying, we have a state of emergency here in New York. Why not go down to Florida, spread germs on the plane, and then spread them in Florida, where they didn't, at least as of then, have a state of emergency? Unsure at this point what's going on in Florida. People congregating at beaches, people going to concerts, people going to bars, restaurants, spreading. Florida increasingly a cluster of coronavirus infection. Irresponsible people. And remember that Fox News' own audience skews older. Is it a good strategy to suggest your audience behave in a way that will kill them off and thus hurt your ratings? I mean, this is obviously, it's all immoral and unethical and wrong what they're doing. But even from a business strategy, does this make sense? Make it likely that the people watching you will be more likely to die if they follow your recommendations. And I really hope that Donald Trump yesterday during his press conference, admitting that coronavirus is not under control, that we are possibly in a recession, that people need to stay home. I hope that this is going to make an impact because too many Republican governors, plus the clowns at Fox News, plus Rush Limbaugh, plus the rest of them, they've been almost urging people to ignore the recommendations from doctors and public health officials and pandemic infection outbreak experts. Those are the people we should be listening to, not Ainsley Earhart and Steve Doocy. These people are dangerous. This is not a joke. This business plan of theirs will kill their own viewers, but this is a sort of negligence at a mass scale. I don't know how this can be called news of any kind. And of course, there's no distinction on Fox News between news and opinion. And in reality, they claim there's a distinction. And you have people who are not only at particular risk if they do this and they fly and they go to the beach and they go to restaurants and do all this stuff. It's not just that. There are people, because of both ignorance in our country, Fox News not distinguishing between news and opinion, and the fact that people can't tell the difference between news and opinion in many cases. You have people who think that that's news. They see Ainsley Earhart saying it's so convenient to fly right now. They consider that equivalent to a doctor specializing in infections saying something different. It's equivalent because of lack of media literacy, because of Fox News deliberately blurring the difference between their news and opinion. It's kind of all infected with opinion anyway, as we know, and simply because of the ignorance that is so widespread in this country. The reporting about coronavirus on Fox News has been and continues to be a public health hazard, and we're going to have more clips on the show's Instagram page. I encourage you to follow us there, at David Pakman Show. Oh, and also, I posted my work from home setup yesterday to my Instagram, david.pakman. Follow me, check it out, let me know what you're doing.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's so great to welcome back to the program today Lee McIntyre, who's a research fellow at the Center for Philosophy and History of Science at Boston University, also author of the book Post-Truth, which we are linking to today from the YouTube video for this interview. Lee, it's so great to have you back.
Great. Thank you so much for having me back.
So a lot of what is in your book, Post-Truth, relates so significantly to what we've seen in media and heard from the federal government led by Donald Trump about coronavirus over the last several months. We've seen everything from denial to disinformation to cloudy data about what is going on, test results that can't really be relied upon because we're not really testing. So let's sort of, to open the conversation, how does your sort of analysis that you do in the book apply to what we're living through right now?
Well, unfortunately, it applies directly. I wrote the book. The book was published 2 years ago. I had no clue about coronavirus. But at the end of the book, I predicted that we were in for a hard correction from reality if we stayed on the route that we were on. Trump has been running this playbook for a very long time. If you look at the things that he was initially lying about, the size of his inauguration crowd, whether he had whether there were illegal voters and he'd actually won the popular vote. Those are things that are important, but he wasn't held accountable for them. And you might say that in a way, that they weren't life and death matters. Well, we're now to a life and death matter. And I think what happened is he got away with those kind of lies. What are they up to now? 15,000 counted through the Washington Post. He got so used to it, and the little boy who cried wolf. And here we are, and we're now getting that hard check from reality, where he's just learned that he can get away with lying and distracting and all the other things. But we're now all undergoing the consequences of that, and we're about to get, within the next 10 days, a very hard check from reality.
One of the things that is sometimes debated now is it that facts don't matter, or is it that it's very easy to get whatever facts you sort of want with the widespread availability of both, liars in government and actual propaganda news and so on? With the coronavirus thing, it doesn't seem that it's that facts don't matter. It's that it's very easy to find a set of facts or supposed facts that say, this isn't really serious. It's sort of like the flu. Keep going to the beach, keep going to concerts, all of this sort of stuff. It's going to pass. It's all under control. So my instinct is, it's not that facts don't matter, is that there's facts available for whoever wants to find somebody asserting one thing or the other thing as is convenient. What's your sense of that?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, if facts didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying so hard to spin the narrative or look for alternative facts. In my book, I define post-truth as the political subordination of reality. So it's not that truth doesn't matter, or that when you say you're in a post-truth era, that's not to say that truth doesn't matter, that nobody cares about truth anymore. It means that we're living in an era in which truth is endangered. And the thing that's endangering it is that post-truth is really a tactic that's used by authoritarians and their wannabes to control the narrative. Because if you can control the narrative and the information flow, maybe you can control the population. And so it's a very dangerous thing that we can read out in many different examples. There are a number of different examples. We're now living through a moment when I think that post-truth is particularly visible, just because so many people are paying attention. So many people are threatened by lies and denial. All of a sudden, we're all on the same boat, and we're not just. It's not just that we're getting our information from different sources. We're all seeing the same things happening in our neighborhood.
What are some of the strategies you suggest people adopt to find out the truth and to cut the risk of maybe signal boosting disinformation? I mean, a great example is every couple of days I read or someone writes to me, hey, they're testing chloroquine as a possible coronavirus treatment. Yeah. And before I say that to my audience, I want to figure out, am I doing the equivalent of spreading anti-vax stuff? or am I reporting on something that's really going on? What's the right process that you recommend people go through to figure out what's real?
It's tough because the minute you report on a lie, you've amplified the lie. And cognitive scientists have shown that people will remember the lie. They won't remember whether it was true. They won't remember the source. They'll just remember that they heard it. And so the thing that's very important to do for anybody in the media is when you're going to report on false information, say the false information is a story because a prominent person said it. I recommend that what people do is follow the advice of the psychologist George Lakoff, who said that what we need is a truth sandwich. You start off by telling the truth, then you report on the lie as a lie, and then you fact check it. You show why maybe the person was motivated to do it and what's wrong with it. So it's very important for folks not to, as you said, amplify false information, because that just puts it out there, and then it goes and goes.
Where are some of the centers of propagating so-called alternative facts or disinformation outside of politics? In politics, we're so familiar with it, and I deal with it every day. Coronavirus is exposing that in medicine, and of course, quack medicine, sham medicine. I think we may understand that one. But what are other sort of centers of disinformation?
Well, I look at it this way. Disinformation is created for a purpose. Disinformation is not an accident. So disinformation is created when somebody has a financial interest or a political interest or an ideological interest in getting people to believe something that isn't true. So when you say outside politics, I don't know if you're including Russia in that. Because one thing that I found very interesting for the last few days is if you look at the Twitter handles that are trending, for the last several days, new Twitter handles in American politics start to trend at around 3 o'clock in the morning, which is, amazingly, well, that's wake up time over in Moscow. So they're messing with our politics. They're messing with our Twitter handles, as we knew. Now, examples out saying, you also mentioned science denial. I mean, if you think about what are the fossil fuel industries, what is the big tobacco, those sorts of people with financial interests, what do they have to gain by creating disinformation? I mean, I'm sure there are other examples that I could give, but you think of if you think of the political and ideological examples, you think of the economic examples, those are really the big ones these days. But I think that anytime somebody is telling you something that you kind of wonder, does that person have a stake in that being true? It should make you skeptical.
When we are thinking now about what needs to happen from here until whenever we start to see a change in the trends with what's going on with coronavirus, it seems to me that when, for example, Fox and Friends says this is actually a great time to fly, the planes are empty, the airports are empty, this is fantastic. There is actually a real human risk, particularly when Fox News' audience skews disproportionately old, to perpetuating this stuff.
Yeah.
What do we do? I mean, what can we do? It's the old folks aren't watching my show, so I have no access to them, right? So how do we manage this stuff?
It's difficult. I heard tell that last night Fox News all of a sudden started to wake up a little bit on this. Tucker Carlson and a few other people started to say, you really have to get serious about this. And then Trump started to take it more seriously, talked about not congregating in groups of more than 10, et cetera. So, and we've known for some time that there's a little bit of a feedback loop between Trump and Fox News. I mean, one thing that I've advocated for a long time, which is particularly hard now that we're all in lockdown. I mean, we're all sheltering in place. But the thing that I've advocated is engagement. People get information from people that they trust. And so maybe they turn on the news and, do they trust what's coming from the news or from political figures that they trust? Maybe they do. But they also trust their friends and neighbors. They also trust their family. And so I think it's really important that we have those conversations. And there's a lot of anecdotal information which shows that works in science denial. Say that's how you get somebody to change their mind about climate change. That's how you get somebody to change their mind about anti-vax. Trusting relationship is the place to share that information. So, we can't give up. Getting the truth out there is really important.
Is there any particular set of, is there a profile of the types of folks that are more likely to open-mindedly reassess their beliefs, in the sense that you might say, well, it's intuitive that older folks are less likely to reassess their beliefs because they've held their beliefs for a longer period of time? That may be completely false, right? Yeah. Are there some of those characteristics that let us build a profile of who is most likely to be open to changing their mind?
There's some empirical work right now going on that I'm a philosopher. I'm not a social scientist, so I'm not sure I'm the best messenger for this. But there is some empirical work going on where they're trying to measure whether or not belief in, say, conspiracy theories correlates with liberal versus conservative worldview. And the trouble with this kind of research is, I mean, you can always think of exceptions. You can always, think of examples where, well, what about this? What about that? In my own research, in the work that I've done on science denial and on post-truth, I haven't really noticed the old versus young, rich versus poor. I guess I'm accepting this as a fact. We all have cognitive bias. The book by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow shows that cognitive biases are built into all of us. And so I think it's dangerous to just say, everybody who believes in conspiracy theories skews right, or everybody who believes in denial of coronavirus skews old, or something like that. For one, it may not be true. For another, I think it overlooks the reality, which is that we all have to be on our guard against these mind bugs, if you want to think of it that way, this ability to believe something because we want to believe it. That's really the danger. So, I can give something of an answer to this to say, look at the literature, on this, because there is, even with people working with fMRIs on this, which is really interesting work. But I don't want people just to dismiss this as somebody else's problem, because post-truth is everybody's problem.
Well, medical stuff, and in particular anti-vax, very interestingly crosses party lines. So when you look at anti-vax, you have people on the right who are anti-vax because they think that it's a government conspiracy, government trying to control them. They're distrustful of government. People on the left say it's for-profit big pharma trying to, pump heavy metals into us or whatever. Very different political views, but they end up in some kind of strange bedfellows sort of situation.
You're absolutely right. And the other thing to notice about anti-vax is that they tend to skew more educated as well, and which is a really interesting thing, because, you think of somebody going, maybe being skeptical, maybe they're scared, and then they go to the internet and they start to do their research, and maybe they find unreliable information, then they do more research. And, we in the trade, going down the rabbit hole, right? Think of it that way. But that's the same way that flat earthers are created, right? They get on YouTube, they start to look at the videos. Next thing you know, they end up there. So, it's really fascinating to me that somebody can be very well educated and still believe some of these things. And I think some of what it has to do, and the literature bears me out here, is that sometimes what happens is, as somebody's better educated, they're more able to defend their views. You talk to some people who deny climate change, and, they can be really up on some of the latest literature. What they don't know how to do is to reason like a scientist. They don't know how to use that evidence and that literature, to make the important point, not to cherry pick, not to expect, zero uncertainty before they have a belief. That's the problem that they're really missing, is not, some particular data point that they can use to shove down your throat, but how scientists reason about data.
Very, very well said. We've been speaking with Lee McIntyre, Research Fellow at the Center for Philosophy and History of Science at Boston University. The book Post-Truth is out, and you can check it out using the link in the description to the YouTube video for this discussion. Lee, always a pleasure having you on.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Is Donald Trump lying about having been tested for coronavirus and testing negative? Now, I'm not suggesting Trump didn't test negative, although it wouldn't surprise me that if Trump had tested positive, they simply wouldn't tell us. But the timing, and especially Donald Trump's very weird answer yesterday when he was asked about what it was like to be tested, it all sounds very strange. And I don't know that Donald Trump was actually tested. So let's go through it. First, starting with the question yesterday during Trump's coronavirus press conference, Trump's first answer about the timing and results of his test.
You had your coronavirus test Friday night. The White House doctor's office put out a statement around midnight Friday saying that no test was indicated. So when exactly was your test administered?
Well, I had my test. I was late Friday night, and the reason I did it was because I had no symptoms whatsoever. So the doctor said, you have no symptoms, so we don't see any reason. But when I did the press conference on Friday, everybody was going crazy. Did you do the test? Did you do the test? So very late on Friday night, I did the test. And he may have put out, or the doctor may have put out something I don't know what time the letter went out. Maybe it was put out by somebody else. But the results came back, I believe, the following day. And we tested negative.
So the question is, how could the White House doctor's office say a test wasn't indicated, implying that you hadn't had one when in fact you had?
Well, I told them that, and I went totally by what they said, the doctors, more than one. They said you don't have any of the symptoms. They checked what you're supposed to check, and that I didn't have symptoms. But I did a test late on Friday night, and it came back probably 24 hours later or something. They sent it to the labs, came back.
So understand the timeline that Trump is suggesting here combined with what we know. Friday at 3:30, Trump was asked during his press conference about being tested, and he said, I have no symptoms. I don't need to be tested, but maybe someday I will be. Friday evening, the White House said Trump doesn't need to be tested. But then Trump now claims that late on Friday, he was tested for coronavirus. If the White House puts out a statement saying, nobody worry, Trump doesn't even need testing, why would he have been tested basically at the exact same time that the White House was putting out that statement? And then Trump claims that Saturday evening, so fewer than 24 hours from when he was supposedly tested, he got a negative test result for coronavirus. So the question is a good one. If at 3 p.m. you said no symptoms, no need for a test. If at night a doctor said no symptoms, no need for a test, why were you immediately tested? And then there's also the question of tests are taking longer than 20 hours or 18 hours. Now, of course, maybe when it's the president, they fast track it. We don't know. But they said that they are hopeful someday we will get to 24-hour turnaround on tests. We're not there yet at this point in time. If the test was done very late Friday, as Trump says, and then early on Saturday evening, the results were already announced, that is way less than the 48 to 72-hour range that is typically the one. That's also weird. But then we get to the real whopper. And this is what, for me, suggested this guy's not been tested. Trump was asked about the test, and the test requires a swab to be inserted pretty deeply into the nose to get to the throat. It's not comfortable. Most people gag, tear up, cough, etc., which is why the people doing the tests have to be in full medical protective gear. And Trump responds in a way where it doesn't seem like he knows how the test is done. And so he says something very vague to avoid saying something that is known to be untrue about the test itself. Check it out and let me know what you think.
What's it like taking the test?
It's not something I want to do every day. I can tell you that. It's it's a little bit of good doctors in the White House, but it's a test. It's a medical test. Nothing pleasant about it.
It's a test. It's a medical test, and I wouldn't recommend. It's not something I would want to do again. Does this sound to anybody else like a completely fabricated story that he made up completely on the spot? So let me know what you think. Do you think Trump is lying about having been tested at all? Do you think Trump is lying about the negative result? If you said to me, is the lie about the result or is the lie about being tested? I think the lie is about being tested, not about the result. Although I do think they would likely lie about the result as well. Let me know what you think. I don't know. One of the really sad and tragic things that too often happens in bad situations is that grifters come out of the woodwork with new grifts that target exactly the most vulnerable people at any particular time. In this case, with the coronavirus, some of the most vulnerable people are older folks often who watch Fox News, often who watch televangelist Christian TV. Now, I already told you last week how this Christian lunatic Jim Baker was told by the New York Attorney General, stop promoting this bogus silver solution cure for coronavirus. It's not a cure. It can be harmful to people's health. Drinking silver solution and similar so-called colloidal silver can make it so your body doesn't properly absorb antibiotics and other medications. It can start to turn your skin sort of a bluish gray. It's bad. Stop saying it cures coronavirus. I have another one for you today, and it just so happens to be another Christian lunatic. This one's Kenneth Copeland, healing people of the virus through the TV. Kenneth Copeland, if you're not familiar with him, is this 83-year-old televangelist worth a reported $760 million, thanks to a very successful multi-decade grift that he's been running. And he has used his grift to fund private jets, to fund a very lavish lifestyle. And here he is, visibly sort of sweaty, with some kind of, I'm sure, special healing water on his hand, healing his viewers, mostly old folks who are at risk, through the TV during a very, quote, special report called Standing Against Coronavirus. We need vaccines. We need antivirals. We need actual medical treatments. Standing against coronavirus with prayer through the TV is not what we need, but that's what he's offering.
Put your hand on that television set.
Yes, Lord.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Lord Jesus. He receive your healing.
Yes.
Now. Say it, I take it.
I take it.
I have it.
I have it.
It's mine.
It's mine.
I thank you and praise you for it.
Yes, Lord.
And I forgive if I have aught against any.
I forgive.
And I praise you that I'm well and whole.
I praise you that I'm well and whole.
Yes. According to the word of God.
According to the word of God.
I'm healed.
Yes.
And I consider not my own body.
Yes. Consider not my own body.
I consider not symptoms in my body.
I consider not symptoms in my body.
But only that which God has promised.
Only that which God has.
Only that what the word has said.
Only that what the word.
And by his stripes I was healed. And by his stripes I am healed now. I'm not the sick trying to get healed. I'm the healed, and the devil's trying to give me the flu.
That's right.
Or whatever else kind of thing he's trying.
Yeah.
Healed and well.
Yes.
In the sweet name of Jesus.
Glory to God.
People are more likely to die if they believe that this works, because they are more at risk of dying if they get coronavirus, because these are older audiences that watch this nonsense. This should be illegal, but it's not. He makes gobs of money with this nonsense. And I hate to break it to you, but it's not just lunatic Christian televangelists that are doing this. Trump has been doing it. Rush Limbaugh has been doing it. Fox and Friends has been doing it. Trump tweeted the day before yesterday, a couple days ago, in his infinite orange wisdom and leadership, quote, "Today is a national day of prayer. God bless everyone. What we need is a day of testing, not a day of prayer. We need a day of procuring ventilators, not blessings. We need people to stay home, not to go to churches. And if we're going to pray for anything, it should be for a competent person to take over dealing with this pandemic crisis." And of course, remember, once you bring God into it, the obvious question is, if all of this is just up to God, why didn't God stop coronavirus? Why did God allow or create coronavirus? Wouldn't it be simpler, easier, better, instead of creating or allowing coronavirus and then waiting for people to pray enough for God to stop it? Why not just skip coronavirus altogether? Oh, well, but David, God works in mysterious ways. Maybe we haven't been praying hard enough, right? We're done, folks, as a society, if this is what we're counting on. Insert bogus lunatic talking point here. This stuff is truly vile. It should be illegal. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. A couple of voicemails today. Going to try to insert a little bit of levity and some less serious topics at a time that is a challenging one for all of us. Let's take a listen to the first voicemail today.
Hi, David Packman. This is Aaron. I was just kind of curious why I only hear men calling in. As you can hear in the background, it's only a man. But anyway, it would be interesting to see what women have to say.
Right.
As well. Anyway, I love your show, and I love the success you're having. So have a good day.
Yeah, and this is actually less about our show. We are the ad agency. Our ad sales program has expanded into an ad agency, and we actually represent a lot of online talk shows for ad sales. And all of our demographics for political online shows skew male. This is not something unique to the David Pakman Show. In fact, we have more of a female audience than many other shows that are in our cohort, that are similar shows to ours. And it's something about the format. Even shows that have a bigger female presence hosting-wise often have a smaller female audience than our show. Then we work with other types of shows that have a much more balanced audience gender-wise as far as that goes. So that is an interesting thing. All right. One other voicemail that's just kind of a funny allusion to Susan Collins, the perennially disappointed Republican senator.
Hey, David, I just wanted to say I'm disappointed in the show today. I haven't listened to it or anything. I just know it's going to be disappointing.
Right.
All right, thanks.
All right. Well, listen, I apologize that I'm letting people down. In all seriousness, it has been, I don't know if heartwarming is the right term. It feels sort of apocryphal to call it that, cliche in a sense. But I have been so thrilled to see that in what are very difficult times for a lot of people, for large portions of the country that are actually doing what we need to do to try to deal with coronavirus, that so many people have been getting in touch and saying, what you're providing is a really valuable service. Thanks for staying on top of the virus. Thanks for staying on top of politics while all of this is going on. Thanks for rearranging production in a way to allow all of this to continue. The live streams, we streamed yesterday's Trump coronavirus press conference across YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. We had about 16,000 live viewers, which for us, that's a great live stream for us. So there's clearly a desire to have information. We're doing everything we can to provide it to people, and we're going to continue, and it continues tonight. I hope you'll join me at 8 p.m. Eastern for the primary results live stream. On the bonus show today, we are going to dig in more, not to the U.S. Stock market collapse, but the world stock market collapse, Europe, Asia, and others, and I have a few personal stories to tell you about it. Also, it's not just toilet paper that people are hoarding. People are starting to buy guns and ammo over concerns around martial law maybe being declared, leading to people having to fend for themselves in a way that might require guns. Now, the funny thing about it, or ironic, is often when martial law is declared, guns are sometimes seized. So we'll talk about that. And then lastly, Mitt Romney has a coronavirus plan that sounds a lot like Andrew Yang's $1,000 a month universal basic income plan. So we will talk about all of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Grab a membership at joinpakman.com or make a Patreon pledge at patreon.com/David Pakman Show to get instant access. I will speak to you then.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.